Okay, I think we're live here, if I'm not mistaken. Um, we'll give it a few minutes here and see if we get some people to join before I get started with tonight's live video stream, which is going to be all about movies or scenes that scare us the most, mostly movies, horror movies. So I'm going to give it a couple of minutes here to let some people possibly check in here. So hopefully everybody can hear me that's in the chat. Um, so yeah, we'll just go ahead and give it a few minutes. Probably get started about 8:10. In about 7 minutes from now, I'll go into my diatribe about what scared me the most as a kid and growing up, and then what still scares me now in terms of horror movies. So a couple minutes. I got my drink here with my horror cup, as you can see. You got all the classic villains on here. Little Jack Daniels and squirt here, so my throat doesn't get dry. I'm ready to go. Oh, Williams checked, and here we go. Yep, here we go indeed. And this is going to be. I want you guys to share what scares you the most as well. It's not just I have a dozen horror movies that I came up with that I can say are ones that truly scare me. Um, but I know there's more. I thought about having more on my list, but I tried to keep honest. I tried to keep it honest as far as ones that actually scare me in terms of making me look over my shoulder, turn all the lights on when I'm home by myself, that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, like I said, we'll just give it a couple more minutes, see if we get anybody else to join before we launch off here. So, I got my Freddy shirt on, Nightmare on Elm Street. There's a reason for that. Little spoiler there, but yeah, it's one of my favorite horror shirts, actually. So yeah, about 5 more minutes here, we'll get started. But yeah, I had to look at all my movies to make sure I don't forget any, because when you got about 800 titles like I do, you can't necessarily remember all 800 on call. So I kind of had to walk through and look at all my movies and think, oh yeah, there's that one. Most of them came to me though right away because obviously if they're movies that scare you, you're going to remember them. So, and I'm actually not somebody that scares all that easily. I've watched hundreds of horror movies and even some that are really well done and I really enjoy. They're some of my favorites in my collection, but they don't necessarily like scare me to where I have to look over my shoulder. Um, they put the fear into me kind of thing. So, um, and actually, it'll be kind of funny when we get started here because I'm actually going to give you some things growing up. Or the first thing when I was a kid that really scared me and gave me nightmares, and it really has nothing to do with horror movies. So stay tuned for that. We'll kick this video off with that. I have all the horror movies in my collection, all 12 of them, but I didn't pull them off the shelves to show. So I'm just going to mention them here, um, as opposed to pulling them off the shelf and then having to put them back and all that kind of fun stuff. So, a couple more minutes here. We'll just give it, see if anybody besides William joins us. Not that I don't love having you here, William. Even if it's just you and me, we'll make it work. Other people can catch up later, but I just want to give everybody a fair shot here. Um, oh, yeah. So, I'm just going to quick do one more thing. I'll be right back. Okay. All right, I think we can get started here. Um, I don't know if anybody else jumps on, this video will always be uploaded on my channel to watch from the beginning. So the first thing I want to mention is what scared me the most as a kid. And I got some bullet points here. So, like I said, it has nothing to do with horror whatsoever. But when I was 5 or 6, the first thing that caused me nightmares, that really scared me at that age. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the show Sesame Street. I watched it in the 80s, basically. That was my time to shine. With it, never saw it after 91, really. Um, I know it's still on some version of it, but if you're familiar with the show in the 80s, you're familiar with the Count, and he's the one that scared me when I was growing up. Just I don't know what it was. His look, his it was mostly the laugh. His or how I can't even do it. Kind of like that. And I don't know, at that age, it just scared me. It got me nightmares, frankly. So the Count from Sesame Street basically is. I also thought even as a Muppet, he was kind of evil looking. He has that one glass, not glass eye, but like that, like eyeglass thing over one of his eyes, and of course he's supposed to be a vampire, obviously, except he's a counter instead, for Sesame Street purposes. But yeah, I just thought that was funny that I'd share that with you. That just his look and his laugh, damn, that got me nightmares. So, and then a couple other things I'm going to mention. One is kind of silly, not really silly, but growing up, it's not really a horror movie, but The Burbs, by Joe Dante with Tom Hanks and Bruce Dern. As a kid, the first time I saw it, well, I guess I would have been like 12, 13, 14 by the time it came out and I was watching it. But there's a dream kind of in the middle of that movie that Ray has. And I remember that scaring me. Like he gets tied to that grill. And you got the Klopex over him and a bunch of other evil brothers. Hey, Jose. Hello, brother. Um, that was a scene that scared me when I was like the first 5 years after that movie was made, I would say. Just the dream sequence in that movie. And of course, The Burbs is more of a dark comedy, I would say, than a horror movie. But that particular scene scared me as a kid. I don't know what it was, but um, and then the other thing that scared me growing up when I watched it the first few times was the Twilight Zone movie. The movie itself didn't scare me, but the prologue kind of scared me as a kid. That opening prologue with Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks, where they're driving on that desolate highway road, and just the music and the look and their dialogue back and forth. And of course, we all know what it turns into if you've seen that movie. Do you want to see something really scary? It's still one of my favorite parts of the Twilight Zone movie, actually. And I also love the end of that movie, how there's a callback to it. Um, but when I was growing up, I mean, I was probably around 8, 9, 10, 11, something like that. That prologue, that beginning scared me. And of course, when he does show him something scary, then the Twilight Zone music started. Do 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 do. And I wasn't used to that at that time, so obviously it doesn't scare me now. Now I just think it's brilliant. But those are just kind of three things to kind of get the ball rolling as far as earliest memories of something scaring me. The Count from Sesame Street, the Twilight Zone movie prologue with Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks, and then the Ray's dream sequence from The Burbs by Joe Dante from 1989. So now that that's on the way, now we can get on to the nuts and bolts of the 12 movies that I've selected. These are all movies that I do have in my collection. Not that that's the be all end all for this, but again, I just want to reiterate these are movies. There's a lot of great horror movies, a lot of movies I really like that are in my collection. But they didn't necessarily scare me the first time I saw them, or they don't scare me to the point where I have to look over my shoulder or have a really uncomfortable feeling when I watch them. So there's a lot of movies you're not gonna hear on this list because I can only pick 12. Um, but you'll know some of these for sure. So the first one I'm going to talk about is going way back to 1922, and that's the silent film Nosferatu. Now, I saw this movie as an adult, actually, and it still scared me. Max Shrek, who plays Orlok. Um, Man, just his look. I mean, when he sits up, when he looks at the camera, those are the stuff in nightmares right there. Um, so yeah, Nosferatu. I know there's different versions, but I'm talking about the one with Max Schreck from 1922, the silent Nosferatu. I also think the fact that the movie's silent, and there's no sound or anything to it, I think also makes it creepier, makes it scarier because you don't really know what they're saying. And of course, they put the words on the screen at that time for silent films, but it's mostly Max Schreck's look as Orlok that just I could watch it now and I'd be turning on the lights in my bathroom to make sure that Orlok wasn't standing in my shower. So so Nosferatu from 1922, that's the first horror movie that legitimately scares me. Gonna take a drink here. In case you're just joining me, this is my horror mug here with all the classic characters: Michael, Jason, Freddy. Um, uh, why can't I think of his name? Who's the clown? I keep wanting to say Art, but that's the wrong franchise. Pennywise. Jesus. Sometimes my brain works. Okay, so the next movie I'm going to talk about that's legitimately, I would say, scared me more the first few times that I saw it, probably in the late 80s. But that movie is from 1960, Alfred Hitchcock's original Psycho. Um, yeah, there's so much about this movie that scares me. I think the directing has a lot to do with it. The way that shots were framed, the way that scenes were framed. Obviously, the shower scene. Um, that changed the way people took showers after that, frankly. And even I've thought when I've thought about that movie and I've been in the shower, I have to admit I've peeked out the curtain every once in a while just to make sure that there isn't a large woman dressed in black with a butcher knife at her side. So that's what that movie did because it was so well directed, so well acted by Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh. The music, of course, of the movie makes it so effective. But not just the shower scene, actually, the scene that scares me the most, and I have to give Vera Miles some credit because she's just got a blood curdling scream, is actually the fruit cellar scene right towards the end of the movie before it cuts to the police station and we get our exposition dump at the end of that movie, which is my least favorite part of the movie. But um, she goes down in the fruit cellar and then sees Mrs. Bates in the chair, turns the chair around, and we're expecting to see Mrs. Bates, and it ends up being what it is, which I don't know why I'm trying to make it spoiler free, but in case nobody's seen Psycho yet, after 64 years, she lets out that blood curdling scream, reaches back, hits the light, and then, of course, we get another character that comes down the hell with it. It's Norman dressed as his mother coming down the stairs with a knife, and that's the big reveal. That's why they really didn't need the exposition dump, in my opinion. But it was 1959, 1960. Maybe people did back then. But that movie, I don't know. I think the direction has a lot to do with why it scared me. Also, of course, it was black and white, and as I've gotten older, I tend to appreciate black and white more than I even did then when I was growing up. I actually like black and white now. I think it makes the movies have to be better written than acted because they can't count on like visual flair and color palettes and things like that. So, but yeah, the original Psycho from 1960, it doesn't really scare me anymore. But I would say when I was a teenager, yet it still scared me. Like the first 4 or 5 times that I saw the movie. And like I said, in the case of this one, I think it's because of the direction and the style of that movie, the original Psycho, and of course its legacy as well. Thirsty tonight. It must have been them chops I put on the grill. Okay, now we're going to go ahead to the 1970s, and I actually only have one horror movie from the 1970s. Keep in mind, too, I have a lot of movies that I haven't seen yet, both in my collection and other horror movies just in general from the decades. So I have a long ways to go yet, obviously, in terms of getting up to date. So obviously, if I don't mention some movies that you think are really scary, might be because I haven't seen them before. But we're going to go with when I thought about 70s movies, I had a couple that popped in my head, but really the one that scares me legitimately is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, Toby Hooper's film. And it really has a lot to do with the documentary grainy style that that movie has. It feels too real. It feels like you're actually watching these people on a hidden camera or something get murdered by this family and Leatherface specifically. Definitely not a Hollywood movie. And as much as I like the remake, you can tell that's a Hollywood movie, even though it's well done. This movie, you just can't tell. And I think that's the scariest and the best thing about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Um, I always remember that part where the guy runs into the house and then trips right before that metal door. And then, of course, Leatherface comes out and whacks him over the head with the hammer. That was always a scary part. And just everything Sally has to go through at the dinner table and everything. And then escape. It's just a brilliant movie, but it legitimately does scare me. Even to this day, frankly, when I watch it. So that's the third movie on this list, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. Um, Now we'll go up. I have a few from the 1980s, as you can imagine, if you follow my channel, my favorite and the best decade of horror for my money. The first one we're going to talk about is probably my favorite horror movie ever, and that's The Shining from 1980. Of course, the Stephen King book, directed by Stanley Kubrick, talking about the one with Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. Rest in peace, Shelley Duvall. Um, God, I love this movie. I just love everything about The Shining. And as far as what makes it scary, I think the sound design, even that kid riding his Hot Wheels on the rug and then on the hardwood floor, and then the rug again, and something as simple as that. Just the atmosphere of the movie, both inside and outside of the Overlook Hotel, the isolation aspect of the movie, and you got three characters and nobody else for most of the movie that are in this large hotel. Um, the visual appeal. And then the thing that really scared me is when he's riding his Hot Wheels, and of course he comes upon that hallway where those twin girls appear to him, and they're like, and then you get the flashback scene of them, all the blood and them being murdered, and of course, they say over and over again, "Come play with us, Danny." Sorry, I can't do it as well as they can, but I think that's a legitimately creepy and scary scene of that movie, and I just love The Shining. But yeah, there's definitely some bizarre and scary stuff in that movie. Towards the end of the movie, when Shelley Duvall looks in that room and there's a guy in a fucking bear outfit that looks like he was giving a blowjob to another guy there or something. I still never understood what the hell that was supposed to mean, other than the hotel's apparently haunted and that had something to do with what happened in the past. I don't know, but I just love it. I love The Shining, and it is legitimately scary for me. Um, Now, the next movie we're going to talk about from the 80s is, of course, the shirt that I'm wearing, the original Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. And this is a movie that I actually saw. The first Nightmare on Elm Street movie I ever saw was part four from 1988. And the idea of Freddy did kind of scare me at that time, even though that movie itself isn't that scary. Even as a kid, I didn't think it was that scary. But the idea of Freddy, because I wasn't familiar with any of the other movies at that time, that did give me nightmares and scare me. Um, but the original movie is definitely the most isolating, the darkest. Well, the second one is arguably is dark, but I just think the original Nightmare on Elm Street, the look of Freddy, the fact that he's not jokey yet, the boiler room scenes and how they look with all the smoke and everything is legitimately creepy. Um, and the fact the movie has a really no escape kind of atmosphere. It's like you're in there. You're trapped with Nancy, the final girl from that movie. And I just don't think any of the other movies quite did it as well as the original. Um, Cyborg 1989 should be a horror movie according to Jose Gomez. I haven't seen that one yet. Is it just a sci-fi movie? Cyborg? I'm not familiar with it, so but yeah, the original Nightmare on Elm Street. If I have to pick one from that franchise, it's got to be the original. Um, And then we've got the final movie from the 19. Well, actually, you know what? I have two more movies. I put one in here at the end. I'm actually going to put Psycho 2 on here from 1983, one of the best horror sequels of all time. And it's not the whole movie doesn't scare me, but there's an ending scene of the old woman walking up the steps towards Norman's house. This is after the mystery's been solved, and we think we kind of everything's been figured out at the sheriff's station once again. And all of a sudden, it cuts to Norman making himself dinner. Um, but in the version I saw, which was the TV version, it didn't cut to his kitchen. It went from Norman walking out of the police station right to this old gray haired woman walking up the stairs, and with the music and everything and the look of the sky. I don't know. That part scared the hell out of me, frankly, when I watched that movie, particularly back in the '80s when I saw it the first few times. I still think Psycho 2 is underratedly creepy. The music gets a lot of the reasons for it. It's a different kind of score than the original, um, but it's got a very like just unnerving kind of score, kind of like, dude, I can't do it. I'm trying to think of it here. Um, Dude. No, fuck it. I'm not going to try to do it. But if you've seen Psycho 2, you can probably guess what I'm saying. But that's the one scene in that movie that scared me was that at the end of the movie when it ends up being Mrs. Spool who's walking up the stairs. Of course, the first time you see, you don't know what the hell's going on because you thought the old woman was dead. So, God, I love Psycho 2. It definitely is an underrated, one of the most underrated horror sequels of all time. So that's one of my other 1980s movies. And then the final one, other people probably have this too, is going to be Pet Cemetery from the original, of course, from 1989. Um, all you have to say is Zelda. Um, William, I like all of them, even the remake. Oh, I'm assuming you're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, I tend to too. There's not, well, I can't say I love all of them. There's a couple. There's one specifically that I really don't like. If you've seen my channel, you know which one it is. But I didn't think the remake was that bad. I do agree that it gets too much hate. But I can find entertainment in all the other sequels, other than one, frankly. But I think the original, because of the idea and how new it was, I think that's the one that still stands out to me, especially from a scary horror standpoint. But I'm with you otherwise, William. I think the franchise has got some really solid entries, either scary or entertaining. Um, but oh, you're talking about Psycho. Oh yeah, I completely agree with you there. Um, yeah, the first four Psycho movies I love. I think they're all great. Now I do think they drop exponentially. Like the first one is the top of the heap for me. The second one is almost as close, but it falls a little bit. The third one falls a little bit more, but I still find that one really entertaining. Psycho, the before the beginning, I have my problems with, but I still really enjoy it, especially the actors that they got, Olivia Hussey and Henry Thomas, and of course Anthony Perkins in the modern timeline. And I like the way that they end the whole kind of the whole timeline with Norman at the end. And the remake, yeah, it's got its positives for sure, even though I don't think it's one of the better remakes for me. So I'm with you on that. The Psycho franchise is great. But yeah, Pet Cemetery from 1989. I've only seen this movie a couple of times, but there's two things that really stand out. All the scenes with Zelda, of course. That's probably the scariest shit in that movie. And then I also think Gage, when he comes back from the cemetery after being buried, it's both frightening and heartbreaking at the same time because of how he died. But when he takes out Fred Gwynn's character, both through the mouth and the Achilles tendon, the ankle and the back, I mean, that's good stuff, man. I love that movie. But Pet Cemetery, mostly because of Zelda, is definitely one from the '80s that legitimately is good horror, good scares there. So, and that brings us up to the '90s. And I believe it or not, I only have one horror movie from the '90s, and I know this was a horror movie that's kind of I think it's mostly liked, but there are people that think it's vastly overrated and don't like it. So we'll see if anybody that's watching this video is one of them. And that's the Blair Witch Project from 1999. Now I realize watching it now that it's not what I thought it was the first time I watched it was which was a real like footage of what was happening there. But even still, the found footage style of this movie, the shooting of it, the camera work, I think the setting is really what does it for me. Being in the middle of the woods, especially when the nighttime scenes, when they're in their tents and you start hearing noises. I mean, if you've been in the woods before and you hear branches or like dry leaves crunching on the ground or something, that's the kind of shit nightmares are made of right there. And I think the Blair Witch Project does it well. The visuals, the sound design, the wood setting, and then of course the scene at the end of the movie in the house. I always found that house very disturbing and unsettling. And then of course what ends up happening in the house, what we see, what our main character ends up seeing before she goes down, and we just see the camera rolling. It's just such an effective movie, even knowing that it's not real, it is a movie that was made. But I think it's really, even though there was found footage movies before that, technically, it's still the one that it's my go-to found footage movie, and I think it always will be. Some of it's nostalgia, but I just think it was really well done. And that wood setting, as well as that house at the end, are the two things that really make this a creepy movie. Where if I turn off all the lights and watch it by myself at night, I'm turning all the lights on, even the ones that rooms that I wasn't in before. So that's what the Blair Witch Project does for me. So and then going on from there, I got three movies from the 2000s, 2000 to 2009. Um, what I'm going to talk about that a lot of people probably don't talk about because it's kind of underrated is the movie Frailty from 2001. This is the one with Bill Paxton, rest in peace. God, I still hate that he's gone. Such a tragedy. But I think the realism of this movie, just the religious extremism realism of it, the fact that there's people out there that probably do view other humans as demons and are, told by God that it's a coming upon them to take them out. And obviously, Bill Paxton's performance, Matthew McConaughey's one of my favorite performances of his. Everything's just very well done in this movie, from the pacing and everything. And there's some genuinely creepy scenes, like when they're approaching their neighbors that they're viewing as demons, and the two kids that are with Bill Paxton. Um, obviously, Matthew McConaughey becomes as one of them as a grown up. I just, yeah, Paxton is legend. Right on, William. He really is. They sometimes on Facebook I see that question that says, "Who's a Hollywood or a celebrity?" I should say, celebrity's death that really affected you, and I don't have to think twice about it. It's Bill Paxton. He did so many movies throughout his career that I absolutely love. Not all horror movies, like Weird Science, for example, from 1985. God, I love him in that movie. He's such a jerk, but his character is, but he's just one of the great jerk performances of all time. Aliens from 1986. I could go on and on. Even a movie like Mortuary from earlier in the decade that he's in, Twister, Titanic. I mean, he is legend. If ever there was a celebrity legend, it's Bill Paxton, and that was the one that affected me the most. Somebody that I never met before. So, but Frailty, that was his crowning achievement because he not only starred in that movie and did a great job, he also directed the movie and did a great job. So, part of the sadness of losing him, of course, is not only that we don't get to see him act anymore, but it's also the fact that I think as a director, he would have gone on to direct some great movies yet. Inside a horror or out, who knows? But he definitely had a flair for directing. I think, yeah, Game Over, man. Game Over. What the fuck are we gonna do now, man? Oh God, it's just classic. I love him in Aliens. I love Aliens anyway, but if he wasn't in it, I don't think I'd love it quite as much. So yeah, but Frailty, that's a movie. If you haven't seen Frailty from 2001, check it out. I find it creepy and scary myself. And then the next one from the 2000s is The Descent, I believe from 2005, I want to say. And I've only seen this movie a couple of times, but man, talk about a horror movie, man, done right from the 2000s. I think the claustrophobic aspect of that movie is the first thing that really scares me and gets me because if there's one thing that I like still have nightmares about as a mid 40-year-old guy yet, it's being in like small spaces, like my body being trapped in like a bathtub drain or something in my dreams, which I know probably seems weird, but so whenever it comes to a movie where somebody's trapped, like in a tunnel that collapses or something, um, I almost have to turn it off. I almost have to turn away. That's the thing that gets me. And this movie has a lot of claustrophobia aspects to it. But also the look of the creatures that these characters run across, the sense of dread that the movie has. I mean, it's horrific all the way through, frankly. And yeah, The Descent is brilliant. And that's another movie that I could put on late at night in the dark and be looking over my shoulder. And then, yeah, I'll buy Frailty this week. Yeah, I definitely recommend it, William. You can't go wrong with that movie. I can't believe it's not talked about more, frankly. I think it's one of the most underrated, not just from the 2000s, but I could say one of the most underrated horror movies, period, because it's so well done. And Bill Paxton deserves so much credit. But my other movie from the 2000s, if you follow my channel, this probably won't be a huge shock. Uh, but the American remake of The Ring, man, from 2002, the scariest PG-13 movie, in my opinion, that's ever been put on film. And yes, I'm including Insidious in that discussion. I love Insidious, the original, but I'm sorry, The Ring scares me more than Insidious does. I did see Ring U, but I actually prefer The Ring by Gore Verbinski, the American remake from 2002. I love. I mean, there's a lot I love about the movie, but in terms of the scary aspects of it, obviously it's the visuals, everything you see on that damn videotape, um, the sound and the music that's used throughout the movie. Um, and then, of course, you can't talk about The Ring without talking about it's not the very end scene, but it's close to being the end scene with her ex husband, where it looks like everything is good to go. They saved her. They can move on with their lives, and all of a sudden his TV pops on, and you got the static there, and all of a sudden the well shows up, and you just. I remember watching that movie for the first time, thinking, "Oh shit, this isn't good. This isn't good," and it really plays out very scary. As she's literally walking towards the TV screen so slowly and so eerily creepy, and all of a sudden her head pops through the screen and she starts crawling on the I mean, just now I'm getting goosebumps. And I know The Ring's not for everybody. There's people that don't like it, and that's fine, but for me, I still think it's one of the scariest all around horror movies ever. Definitely the for PG-13, there's no doubt it's second to none for me. So the Ring, not Ring 2, that was a mess, but the original American remake, The Ring from 2002. The last movie I saw that actually had me on the edge of my seat was, yeah, Wolf Creek. I've heard about that one. Do I have that in my collection? I might not even have. Oh yeah, no, I do. I have it. I just haven't watched it yet. But I've heard from other people that it's one that'll let you know where your ass is and where your heart is and stuff. And I definitely got to check Wolf Creek out. That's one that's definitely on my very long list of movies to watch here. Um, But with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and get in because I've given you 11. Now I'm going to give you 12 before we turn it over to you guys. Um, this is from the 2010s. I believe it was 2014 or 2015. But that movie's Hell House LLC, another found footage movie that's done right. And the thing that stands out about Hell House LLC is that damn clown. That's what I always think of, is that damn clown that's positioning itself on the stairs differently or has its head turned within a few seconds. Of course, the scene in the bed where the one character's in the bed and goes under the covers, and um, that's a really creepy, scary scene. The ending is very effective and creepy, although not necessarily scary, but just the overall atmosphere of that movie. I think the first Hell House LLC from 2015, I want to say, that really caught my attention. The one it's definitely one of my favorite horror movies of the last 10 or 12 years for sure. If you haven't seen that one, I highly recommend it as well. Hell House LLC. You could probably still stream it. It was on Shutter at one time. I don't know if it still is or not, but anyway, those are my 12 horror movies that legitimately scare me when I watch them. So you guys can go ahead and shout out any in the comments that scare you, either when you were a kid or growing up or saw it for the first time, or ones that you watch and they still give you the creeps yet. I'd be curious to see what other people have. Hell House is good. Yes, it is. It's a very well done found footage film. Probably my second favorite, right behind the Blair Witch Project from a found footage standpoint, and then right behind that would probably be um, what do you call it now? Shoot, I forget the name. It's from 2014, I believe. Oh, As Above, So Below, I think is also a really well done found footage movie. That's another one that makes me cringe because of a person does get trapped as the cave falls in on him under the catacombs. So, like I said, that's my kryptonite. Yeah, the original Evil Dead had a lot of jump scares for me as a kid. I thought actually about putting that one on the list when I was going through the 80s. Because I think the original Evil Dead, as much as I love the remake from 2013, that is definitely, from a technical standpoint, a better made movie and very well done. But the original Evil Dead, again, kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because of the cheapness of it, because of the grainy quality to it, the scares actually got me a little bit more with that original movie from 1981. The House is October Built is pretty cool too, William Belasco said. Yeah, that's another one where I think I have the two pack of, aren't there two of those movies? Or am I thinking of something else? The House is October Built. Is that the one with, I have the two film collection, The House is at October Built. I have to check those out too. I haven't seen them yet. That's definitely on my list. Though I have so many movies in my collection that I just two is whatever. Yeah, that's usually the case with a lot of movies where they really hit it big with the first one and then they got to rush out a sequel. That's been done before, unfortunately. But yeah, so many movies that I haven't seen but I do own. So, um, what else do you guys have? Anything as far as ones that scared you? You can feel free to go ahead and comment down below. Um, any of them that stand out to you, even if they're not ones that I mentioned, or even if they are ones that mentioned. I know one scene from a movie that's not a horror movie that a lot of people mention is scaring them is from The Wizard of Oz with the flying monkeys, which I found kind of funny. I don't know. When I was a kid, for some reason, that didn't really scare me. Um, yeah, I don't know. I watched that movie a lot as a kid because back in the 80s they put it on when you had your five basic channels before cable and all that. They put it on CBS like every spring, I want to say. The Wicked Witch was creepy, I'll give you that, in her green makeup, but I still never had nightmares or was really scared from that. I have a wall of movies that I'll never be able to watch before I leave this. Yeah, I'm starting to get the feeling that I might not get all mine, and especially if the good thing is I can't add anymore because all my space is basically full up now. And of course, I also, besides horror movies, I also collect like classic TV shows, so that also takes up some space too. And I'm collecting those as life goes on. So, yeah, I only have so much room, and I've kind of reached the end of my unless I start watching more movies, realizing I don't like them and selling them or getting rid of them, and then filling the space that's left by them. But I've definitely over my skis right now in terms of horror movies that I'm able to watch. So, um, but yeah, if there's anybody else out there watching, I see I got 7 views. I don't know who else is in the chat. Feel free to drop a horror movie or a movie in general, anything in general, even a TV series. I will say one TV series recently that scared me a little bit was probably Midnight Mass by what's his name? I can't think of the director, but I really like him. Um, Shoot, he did the Haunting of Hill House, which I absolutely love that show. I have that as well. Um, I'm eBaying other collections now. Yeah. But Midnight Mass was a very effective and there was some scary shit in that show. It came out a few years ago. I think you could still stream it on Shutter probably. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much what I've got for scary movies. Like I said, I thought about putting the original Halloween and mentioning that because there are moments in that movie, especially towards the end, when Michael sits up and his head turns and Laurie thinks she's won and she's walking away and he's walking behind her. But I don't know. That's not really scary. It's very effective. there's a difference between effective scares and scares that actually just scare the hell out of me. So that's kind of what I wanted to keep with this list. Any other movies, William, that you can think of that are, or any other moments from television or non-horror movies that ever scared you? Yeah, Midnight Mass is great. I like it just behind the Haunting of Hill House. I do like it more than the Haunting of Bly Manor. Not that there was anything wrong with that one, but the Haunting of Hill House is definitely my favorite of the Mike Flanagan. That's who I was trying to think of. He's just like the best horror director going right now for my money. Um, but Midnight Mass was really good, really effective horror show from at least I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. So, but yeah, I'm trying to think if I don't think there's really anything else I can think of on my end as far as stuff that really scared me down to my core. I almost thought about putting Session 9 as another one from the 2000s that I thought about putting on this list. I thought that movie's pretty creepy, but I don't know that it scares me. I think that's an effectively creepy movie again, more than one that just makes me look over my shoulders. I think it's very a very well done movie. That's why I didn't add it to my list. Um, I see people put like when I googled a list of like the scariest horror movies of the last 20 years, I kept seeing Midsommar on there. It's like, how is that movie scary? I mean, I'm not going to say it's terrible or anything. It's not my flavor of vodka, frankly. I've only seen it once, though, to be fair. But one of the scariest movies of all time. I don't, not when it all takes place in broad daylight. I don't quite see that. A lot of people mention Hereditary too, which is still one that I haven't seen, but I have in my collection. I have to watch that. I've been saying that for feels like 3 years now. There's only so many hours in the day, though. You know what I mean? But what was I saying? No. Um, yeah, I don't know. Some of the like the recent movies, I think the Witch was also mentioned, which I really liked the Witch, but I wouldn't say that it scared me. It follows. No, not for me. It didn't scare me. It's not bad, but um, I don't know who makes those lists. I think I'm pretty comfortable with the 12 that I brought up, going all the way back to 1922, right through. Well, I guess the last one would be Hell House LLC 2015. So you're talking about like almost 100 years of horror history there. I think my 12 I'm pretty content with because they legitimately scare me. I'm not just making a list of ones that I think scare other people. These are ones that actually do scare me. I know a lot of people like the Conjuring movies and the Insidious movies. I love those movies, but I can't say that I've ever been like scared by them. Again, effective by James Wan, effective horror. Um, what else? Yeah, Serbian film is really fucked up, but neither are scary. Um, Yeah, I've heard about that. I don't really have any desire to see a Serbian film because I'm not really an extreme horror kind of person. I've seen a few extreme horror films, probably Martyrs being the most well known one, and that's a really well put together movie. I'm not going to rush out to watch it anytime soon again because it was a tough watch, but I've also seen The Untold Story a few years ago. That movie, man, I don't ever see myself watching that again. I'm just not. That's when I realized that I'm just extreme horror just isn't for me. I know it's for a lot of people like it, and that's great. Um, but I like fun horror. I like horror that's not disturbing where we have to watch kids die on screen and shit like that. But yeah, what other? There's The Exorcist is always mentioned too. But I have to be honest. The Exorcist is another one that's effectively creepy, but scary. I don't know. I think in 1973, if you saw it for the first time, it probably was because up to that time, you'd never really seen anything like that. So I can appreciate that for the people that saw it at that time and were passing out and throwing up and everything. But I think the problem with The Exorcist is now we're so desensitized to a lot of things 50 years later that it's not really that scary when you watch it. I still love it. Don't get me wrong. I still think it's the best possession movie by far. Um, okay, Martyrs was more graphic, but a Serbian film was more psychologically damaging. Huh, interesting. I do like psychological horror. Um, but I don't know. Do I want to get fucked up like that? I don't know. But yeah, Martyrs was graphic, that's for sure, and it didn't waste any time either. It got right to it, right from beginning to end. It was graphic, but yeah, I don't know. Would you recommend a Serbian film, William? Like to somebody that doesn't like? Yeah, I agree. Exorcist is a classic, absolutely, but not scary. I agree 100% with that. But yeah, I don't know if I don't want to watch a movie that's just gonna really mess me up. Um, unless it's legitimately scary. I know there's other movies too people have talked about, like Lake Mungo and Wreck. I know the Wreck series, especially the first one, which is kind of like found footage. No, you wouldn't recommend it? Okay, cool. I wasn't going to anyway. But there's a lot of movies again that I have in my collection, like the original Wreck, that I really want to see and just haven't had time to up until now. But I will at some point. So if I do this list in a couple of years, it could be quite different, and hopefully it is. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with the 12 horror movies I got right now. But yeah, and shoot, I was hoping to get a few more people on here to talk about what scares them the most. If you don't watch this movie live or this video live, you still comment down below, and this video will be posted on my channel. What really scares you? As far as it doesn't have to be horror movies; it could be any movie, any TV show, any educational program like My Sesame Street and the Count. Really, anything. Yeah, I don't recommend the Serbian film to anyone, William. Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard from other people too. I think I'll probably stay away from that one. What's the other one that a lot of people say to? What about August Underground? Have you ever seen that, William? There's a movie called August Underground that a lot of people say is pretty fucked up, but some people actually like it. Those are kind of the two that a lot of people talk about as far as. I mean, there's other ones obviously, like in the martyrs category, you have Irreversible and uh, what else? There, Levide, which I have not seen those, but I know people talk about those in the same sort of the same framework as martyrs. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I know I don't like extreme horror, but there's that little bit of part of me somewhere way back in the desolate parts of my mind, and it's like, do I want to watch it just so I can say I've seen it? But nah, not at my age because I've got way too many movies that I do want to see to watch. Even movies going back before like 1960, I have so many Dracula films, so many Hammer horror films, so many of those old black and white creepy movies. Okay, August Underground is not that bad, just gross and grainy. Well, okay, then maybe that's if I was gonna check one out, it'd probably be that one, certainly before a Serbian film from all accounts. But I don't know. I'm not gonna go out of my way either. Now I'm going to another horror con next month in Cincinnati. So we'll see if they do. They tend to have a table at one of these that is like all extreme horrors. So if I see August Underground, maybe for the right price, I'll pick it up. But I'm not going to get a Serbian film, or and maybe I could just stream them somewhere too. So I don't need to spend the money. But like I said, it'd be one thing if I didn't have like 100, well, more than that, probably like 300 movies in my collection that I need to watch yet, and those are just horror movies. So, but yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of anything else that stands out or that I thought about putting on my list. None of the Friday the 13th were ever scary to me. Those were always just fun schlocky movies. Murder Set Pieces, NC-17 only, is phenomenal to me, like an updated Maniac. Huh, I've never heard of that one. Murder Set. Is that all one movie, Murder Set Pieces? Is that from a different country or is that an American release? I might have to check that out and see where its origins are. Do we still have Jose out there, or did he check out sometime? I wanted to see if he had any movies that came to mind for him, any horror movies that, or anything that scared him legitimately, either growing up or still now when he watches them. But I don't know. I thought this was a pretty cool topic because obviously everybody's scared by different things, and I just think it's really interesting what can scare one person doesn't scare another person. And I think that's great because we don't want to all share the same opinion or be scared by the same thing because how boring would that be? So um yeah, I don't know. I know there's a lot of movies that tried to be scary over the years and really fell flat on their face. Um yeah, I don't know. The 70s was a time that I was thinking about adding some other movies that decade because that's kind of the decade where they really started to go for it. Like I feel like Night of the Living Dead from 1968 kind of opened the gate a little bit in the late 60s, along with Rosemary's Baby. And then the 70s, it just kind of, that's when movies really said, okay, screw it, let's just go for it. So you get films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Exorcist, The Omen, Halloween, Alien, the original Alien, which I also thought about adding to my list, but the chest bursting scene in there probably. The R-rated version has no too much cut from it. Doesn't make okay. Well, if I do my research on Murder Set Pieces and I find it, I'll make sure that it's an American film by Nick Palumbo. Okay, well I'm definitely gonna look into that and see what it's all about and see if I can get it or not. Um, and I'll make sure it's the NC-17 version and not the R version. Um, but yeah, the 70s was the one decade. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Of course, you got Jaws, but Jaws was never. I love Jaws to death, the original, but it never really scared me. I guess the one scene that came the closest was probably at the end when Quint ends up falling into the shark and he's kicking and everything, and then the shark bites him and he coughs up blood. I remember thinking as a kid that was kind of scary, but it never really stood out to me in the same way that these other movies did. But yeah, I guess if nobody else out there that's watching wants to, if they don't have anything else to bring up as far as anything that scares them that they've watched either years ago when they were younger or now that still scares them, I think the best, I think the movies that still scare you even after you've watched them a few times are are really the best ones because, they stand the test of time, obviously, and they're classics for a reason. So, but it's 8:56, almost an hour, so I guess I'm going to wrap this up in a couple minutes if nobody has anything else to bring up in the chat here. Yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 74 is the greatest film of all time. Definitely one of them. I mean, you think of horror, that certainly is one of the first two or three that pop into your mind. Um, None of the sequels certainly, although some of them I don't mind, but none of them touch the original because of how it was made. Like I said, with that grainy look and just that realism. Um, it's just so damn scary, and it's not gory. That's what a lot of people think because I think because the weapon is a chainsaw, everybody talks about it like it's the goriest film of all time. There's hardly any blood in it, frankly. Um, that's the sign of a great movie when everybody says that it's gory, but then when you actually watch the movie, you realize there's no gore in there. Have a great night, brother. Yeah, you too, William. Thanks for stopping in and staying with me on my live feed here. I really appreciate it. Yeah, with that being said, I guess I'm going to wrap this up. But like I said, anybody that didn't get to be on the live chat here, this is going to be on my channel, posted under live videos. So you can go ahead and in the comments below put what you think is some of your scariest moments or scariest horror movies or scenes from anything, really. I don't want to just just say horror movies because some people, as I said, find something scary that others don't. So, with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up. I hope everybody has a good night. So we're in the middle of August. Summer's almost over. Damn. But that means we're just all that much closer to October and Halloween. So I'm not going to complain about that. So with that being said, thanks for watching this live video or checking it out. And as always, stay scared. Bye, everyone.